September 27, 2014. In the picturesque city of Springville, Utah, 18-year-old Jansen McGee returns to his family home after a night out with his girlfriend. At around 7 p.m., he ascends the steps, grasps the door handle, and steps into the usually lively home, only to be met with deafening silence. The sight is particularly strange as the family's cars remain parked in the driveway. Jansen starts searching the home, puzzled by his family's sudden disappearance. Deep down, he senses something is amiss. He and his girlfriend climb the stairs of their 2-story house, eventually reaching the locked master bedroom door. Repeated knocks and calls for his parents go unanswered. Growing increasingly anxious, Jansen's girlfriend decides to contact his grandmother, Valerie Sudweeks, for assistance in unlocking the door. Around 8 p.m., Valerie arrives at the family home, accompanied by a friend. They enter the eerily quiet residence and find Jansen and his girlfriend at the top of the stairs, standing before the master bedroom door. With the help of her friend, Valerie manages to pry open the door. The bone-chilling scene they discover inside sends shivers down their spines.
The address. The whole family is dead? Yes. How many do we have there? 5.
Southward, a mere 45 miles from the renowned Mormon capital, Salt Lake City, there lies a town named Springville. It was here that the Strack family resided. Husband Benjamin, wife Christy, and their 4 children, Benson, aged 14, Emery, aged 12, Zion, aged 11, and Jansen McGee, the eldest at 18, born from Christy's first marriage, along with his girlfriend. The Strack children led lives far from the ordinary. Benjamin had sporadically worked for a bricklaying company, Alaska Masonry, for 7 years and had borrowed money in the past. Court records reveal that Benjamin and Christy Strack were convicted of misdemeanor forgery charges in 2008 and disorderly conduct the year after. Both Christy and Benjamin had troubled pasts riddled with substance abuse, primarily involving opiates and heroin, which left them with lasting mental and emotional scars. Christy herself underwent methadone treatments to combat her heroin addiction. Around 2008, Christy stumbled upon a book called Under the Banner of Heaven by Jon Krakauer. This gripping tale delved into the sinister side of religious extremism within the realm of Mormonism, specifically chronicling a gruesome double murder committed by 2 brothers, Ron and Dan Lafferty, in 1984. The Lafferty brothers were members of a fundamentalist offshoot of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and their heinous deeds were justified through their religious convictions. In this chilling narrative, Krakauer masterfully weaves the story of the Lafferty murders with a broader examination of the LDS Church's history and beliefs, as well as its fundamentalist splinter groups. He delves into the origins of Mormonism, from its establishment by Joseph Smith in the 19th century, the practice of polygamy, and its eventual renunciation by the mainstream LDS Church. Moreover, Krakauer discusses the fundamentalist factions that persist in practicing polygamy and other controversial doctrines rejected by the LDS Church. In the dark history of American crime, few tales are as chilling and unsettling as that of Ron and Dan Lafferty. Driven by their extreme religious convictions, these two siblings embarked on a destructive path that would shatter their victims' lives and leave a lasting impact on Utah's tight-knit community. The Lafferty brothers, Ron and Dan, were raised in a devout family within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Their father instilled in them distrust of the government and modern medicine, fueling their radical beliefs as they aged. In 1983, they were excommunicated from the church, pushing them further towards extremism. They joined the School of Prophets, a fundamentalist fringe group at odds with the main Latter-day Saints church's decisions to ban plural marriage and accept black converts. Ron and Dan's radical views, including their support for polygamy, clashed with their sister-in-law Brenda, married to their brother Alan. Brenda, college-educated, progressive, and assertive, defied the brothers' belief that women should be subservient to their husbands. Ron accused Brenda of encouraging his wife, Diana, to leave him and take their 6 children to Florida. Furthermore, Brenda opposed Alan's involvement with their new sect. Ron professed to receive a divine revelation instructing him to remove Brenda and her 15-month-old daughter Erica, seen as obstacles. Before the murders, Ron shared his removal revelation with several School of Prophets members and family members, including Dan, their mother, and Alan. Despite Alan's skepticism, he didn't warn Brenda about the threat.
I'd call her a tear.
So what happens to tears in the end of days, sister?
According to prophets Joseph and Brigham, there are some sins beyond repentance. Some say the only way to forgive a tear is through the doctrine of blood atonement. It means to cleanse one of their sins by spilling their blood out onto the ground.
On July 24, 1984, the Lafferty brothers enacted their horrific plan. They entered Brenda and Alan's apartment in American Fork, Utah. Brenda's body was discovered in the kitchen, a vacuum cord around her neck and her throat slashed, while Erica was found lifeless in her blood-drenched crib, her throat also slashed. After committing these heinous acts, the brothers fled the state but were apprehended weeks later in Reno, Nevada. They didn't deny their involvement in the murders. Both siblings were tried and convicted in separate 1985 trials. Dan escaped the death sentence, receiving 2 concurrent life sentences without parole eligibility. Ron initially faced the death penalty, but his conviction was overturned on appeal due to mental competence concerns. Retried in 1996, he was reconvicted and resentenced to death. Ron ultimately died of natural causes in 2019, having spent 34 years on death row. While imprisoned, the brothers displayed varying degrees of remorse. Dan eventually penned a letter to Brenda's parents expressing regret. In contrast, Ron never publicly apologized, although some speculate his 1984 suicide attempt may have stemmed from guilt. Brenda's sister, Sharon Weeks, initially supportive of the death penalty, has since become an advocate for its abolition. She cites Ron's declining health and the ethical concerns surrounding executing someone in a wheelchair as reasons for her change of heart. Their story has been adapted into various forms of media, including John Krakauer's investigative book, Under the Banner of Heaven, and a television series based on the book in 2022. Intrigued by the book, Christie grew fascinated with Dan Lafferty. Her curiosity began innocently, writing letters to Dan while he served his time in Utah State Penitentiary. Upon finishing the book, Christie's fascination escalated as she and Ben paid weekly visits to Dan in prison. They were drawn to Dan's religious persona, embracing his teachings and basking in his notoriety. Christie even believed that Dan, the prophet, would cure her ovarian cancer. Although Christy and Ben had strong ties to the Mormon Church, they strayed as their fears and beliefs, especially about an impending Armageddon, intensified. Convinced that God's wrath would soon be unleashed upon the world, their mindset was likely influenced by an external force like Dan, but their mental illness made them vulnerable. It wasn't just the Stracks who were obsessed. Dan too became attached to the couple, who showered him with attention. He encouraged their letters and visits and grew fond of them. For 15 years, since the last episode, Dan had grown his hair like a biblical prophet, but at Christy's behest, he cut his hair and beard, once waist length, and sent it to the Stracks as a gift. Dan even requested in his will that his ashes be sent to Christy and Ben when the time came. Dan claims he treated Christy like a daughter, and she in turn had fallen in love with him. Benjamin was aware of Christy's love for Dan and accepted it, entranced by the prophet's spell. Around 2008, the couple's relationship with Dan began to wane due to various legal reasons. At one point, Christy attempted to pass Benjamin off as her brother to visit Dan, leading to a temporary loss of visitation rights. However, they would soon lose all access to Dan Lafferty when they faced forgery and drug-related charges of their own. It was then that Christy and Ben withdrew their kids from school. Those around them assumed the couple was metaphorically leaving society and going off-grid. Little did they know the heinous act the couple would commit, but their obsession with one of Utah's most cold-blooded murderers should have been a more prominent red flag. Dan Lafferty's connection with the Strack family seemed to have reached a standstill. However, the impact had been made, and by September, the Strack family would become Dan Lafferty's next and last unsuspecting victims.
I know in previous conversations there was talk about suicide, and my dad said if that's something that you feel like you need to do, then that's something I guess you feel like you need to do.
So he supported her suicide?
He supported her suicide.
A week had passed since Benjamin was last seen at work. On September 27, 2014, Christy's eldest son, Jansen, and her mother forced open the door to her master bedroom. What they discovered were the lifeless bodies of the entire family. Benson, 14, and Emery, 12, lay on an air mattress at the foot of the bed, covered by a sheet. Zion, 11, was found in the bed, wedged between his parents, Christy and Benjamin, who were supposed to be their protectors, champions, and guardians. Benjamin's body was the only one uncovered, and the positioning suggested he died last. The cause of death was not immediately apparent, but a yellow-orange liquid, a lethal drug cocktail, was later found in a child's sand pail in the room. Further testing and toxicology reports revealed a deadly concoction of cold medicine, allergy medicine, pain medicine, sleeping medication, and cherry-flavored liquid methadone. This potent mixture was designed to eliminate the children without a doubt. They were put to sleep, unaware of their impending demise. Christy overdosed on a lethal dose of methadone prescribed for opiate treatment, while Benjamin succumbed to a heroin overdose. Despite numerous warning signs, the family murder-suicide shocked those around them. Hindsight, of course, is always clear. Back at the house, police discovered a to-do list that seemed to belong to an ordinary family preparing for vacation. Reminders included feed the pets and find house sitter. No suicide note or other indication that the family didn't intend to return was found. The only evidence of premeditation was a letter 14-year-old Benson had written to a friend. 2 days before the tragedy, he gave many of his belongings to his best friend, which held value for a teenager. In the note, he hinted that his family might not be around much longer. With no signs of trauma or struggle, the children tragically placed their trust in their parents. Ben and Christy sought to escape what they perceived as evil in the world, but it turned out they were the evil. deaths of the two youngest children were ruled homicides, as they were too young to consent. However, Benson's death was labeled "could not be determined." A Springville police press release stated, "Because of his age, it is difficult to determine if he was capable of making a decision to commit suicide or to consent to join with his parents in committing suicide. The other two children were obviously too young to consent to any sort of agreement to commit suicide." Dan Lafferty received word of the tragedy that befell the Strack family. He couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility for the darkness that had consumed them. It was undeniable that his influence had left a mark on Benjamin and Christy, fueling their desire to escape the world they perceived as evil. The community was left reeling, unable to comprehend how such a seemingly ordinary family could be driven to such a horrific end. The Strack family's murder-suicide served as a chilling reminder of the impact that twisted ideologies can have on vulnerable individuals. As the details of the case emerged, many struggled to come to terms with the reality that the parents, who were meant to be the protectors and champions of their children, had instead led them to their deaths. The investigation continued, delving into the depths of the Strack family's lives and the connections they shared with Dan Lafferty. It became evident that their association with him had fueled their fear of the world and pushed them toward their tragic end. They had been seeking an escape from what they believed to be an increasingly corrupt world, but in doing so, they had become the very evil they sought to avoid.